head over to miniaturemarket.com where they have thousands of board games at discounted prices like Forgotten Waters. Ahoy there mateys, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're going to be our own pirates, going on a mission together. We're each going to have our own backstory, we're going to have certain things we're trying to do, but in the end we're working together, trying to complete scenarios, getting on the ship, sailing around, taking out bad guys, things like that. Today we're talking about Forgotten Waters. This is from Plaid Hat Games. This is sort of a thematic narrative story adventure worker placement game that's part of their crossroad systems where you'll have to make decisions that go one way or another. Let's take a look. I'll see you on the other side. In Forgotten Waters, you're going to be one of these 7 pirates, and you'll get your own standee, and you'll be able to create your own pirate's backstory. And if you don't want to come up with your own pirate name, you can use dice to come up with the first and or last name of your pirate, where it will give you a moniker and a name, like Groggy Coco or Jelly Roll Jones. Not only would you name your pirate here, but you get to pick your pirate, like the debater pirate, who's really good at swagger, for example, or maybe the all-seeing pirate, who's really good at aim and navigation and exploration. Also, when you flip it over, you get to come up with things kind of like a Mad Libs, where something foul, a villainous name, a made-up interrogation tactic, someone you hold dear, the name of a woman, and these are always different things on each pirate. And you'd write them in, and then you'd actually read them here as sort of the backstory of your survivor pirate, and these certain things will come up in these certain events that will happen to your pirate specifically as the game goes on. Now the game comes with an app that is necessary to play the game. Now it's a web app, but you can download it locally if you want to play it offline. Now there's 5 different scenarios in this game, and each of these scenarios have 2 parts. Sort of during the middle they have a save point, and these scenarios in total take about 4 hours to play, so you could play about 2 hours, stop if you want to, and then play another 4 hours, and there's 5 different scenarios as you can see, and you could select any one of these. The other cool thing is that each scenario you'll be a different pirate, so that will give you different strategies, and you don't have to play with the same group of people, so it will allow you to get more scenarios played. Now each scenario has a different setup. Here's the board. There's many different tokens that you'll use to set up and see things throughout the course of the game, and again they're different for every scenario, and each scenario have different goals. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but essentially let's say we want to get from here over to here for the first half of the game. Well, you might be able to scout out different spots before you move there, and you're trying to watch out for the enemy, and you can see the different tiles, and you'll be, pushing in certain numbers into the app once you get there, and it tells you to read that specific number. For example, let's say we moved to 19, and the game actually told us to trigger that number. So let's say we wanted to go to 19, we would simply type it in that box, and then we'd hit YAR. So when we get there, this one in this case is a crossroads event. And you'd get to listen to the voice actors by hitting play.
On the horizon, you notice a small island heavily guarded by the Royal Navy. Unable to land, you turn away but notice a small frigate racing toward you, oddly turning away from the island as well.
Private ship!
Shouts the lookout from above.
El Pavo Real! I see a lot of people on deck! More than normal! Passenger ship, Maysby!
The crew cheers at this, eager for plunder.
El Pavo Real?
A young man next to you asks, his face turning white.
Oh, I have people on that ship. People who matter. Please, you're a senior member of the crew. Help me, and I'll give you something sparkly I recently found.
So now we can decide, do we tell a sailor rules are rules and El Pavo Real is a fair game, or do we take the young man's treasure and help convince the crew? You decide, and then certain things will happen depending on this. Now typically you'd end up removing this tile, but these are navigation tiles and there's a ton of them. They randomly come out, so the chances of seeing this again, even if you play the same scenario, is different. Plus, if this specific tile, 19, came up in a different scenario, something different is going to happen. Also, depending on what you've chosen, it will have you go to a certain page in the book. In this case, let's just say we're at Clear Sea, for example. Now over here, you see, these are worker placement spots too. We have a hungry crew, we have a chart a course, explore, spear fish, talk to a crew, captain's quarters, and sail. Now, each of the pirates are going to be able to select where to go on these spots. However, these spots only have one person can go. This one has multiple. These ones, someone is forced to go to these spots. Now there's different boards each player gets to sort of help, maneuver the game, but one of them is the Quartermaster Infamy track, and this shows how infamous people are. And people are going to be moving up and down this track. This is the highest, for example, and they're going to be able to place their workers in Infamy order, and certain things will happen if you're higher or lower on Infamy throughout the game. Now players will start the app. You actually have 40 seconds for everyone to decide where they're going, and these actually correspond with some icons that give you some idea of what might happen when you go there, what kind of checks you're going to have to do, like aiming, hunting, or exploration, or things like that, navigation. So you know which ones you're going to possibly be moving up in and getting better at, but you also get to see what types of things you might get, like supplies or treasure, or who knows what's going to go on. Now to the right of that actually has what will happen when you go there, but you're not supposed to look at this before you actually, as you're picking during those 40 seconds. And then once everyone's selected, from the first action down, everyone will do their action. Now I'm purposely not going to show you what a lot of these things do, but for example, the hungry crew, sometimes you have choices. You can feed the hungry crew and spend a certain amount of supplies equal to the ship's hunger, or you can ask them to go hungry, which is going to raise discontent, but you're going to gather some swagger and infamy for losing infamy for doing that. But you might let them raid the supplies, which makes your infamy go up, but bad things are going to happen. It's going to get discontent, certain things like that. So sometimes you'll have choices on what to do. Now this shows this. They're going to go up in exploration on their sort of tracker, and then they're going to be able to do a check. And depending on what they roll, they'll be able to do certain things, like scouting 2 spaces and losing infamy, or scouting 3 spaces and gaining a treasure, or scouting 3 spaces. Now when you go up certain spots like exploration, you'd X this out. So now if you did a check for that, let's say you rolled a 12, it'd be 12 plus whatever you're at. In this case, exploration 1, we'd be at 13. And so the more you go up a track, the better you are at checks for those, which means you're going to be getting better things throughout the game. Now anytime you check off one of these that has a star, you actually get to color in one of these stars that's next to the middle one, or one that's next to one of the other ones. And what you're trying to do is finish certain ones of these. Anytime you finish to get to one of these, you'll get a little token. And certain times throughout the game, you're actually going to be able to trigger one of those events. And essentially, when you trigger one of those events, it's going to do something like this from 1 to the bottom. And it's going to use, again, your Mad Libs. It's going to trigger, and usually good things will happen for you. Now, over the course of the game, you can be getting different treasures which do different things, like a knife sharpener. When you gain 1 or more brawn, you may steal the treasure from another player. And some of these things will give you, +1 to hunting, for example, when you make skill checks. Other things will be happening for the specific story of what you've chosen, like a horrifying hook hand. When you gain this card, you get 2 of those misfortunes, which makes it harder to do skill checks, but you get a brawn. So thematic things will happen throughout the game. So not only are you keeping track of infamy, you're keeping track of supplies, which will be used to do certain things. Also threat track. You'll be getting threat throughout the game. I want to ask you to check. If you check and it's actually at where this thing is, then something bad will happen. You'll have to read something. But you have different goals, like this one says reach a certain specific island 963, and different goals will come out throughout the game. Now you'll also be managing cannons. Sometimes they're loaded, unloaded. You'll be shooting at different things. You'll have a hull. If this ever gets to 0, you have lost. Then you'll have the crew and the discontent. If discontent goes up, that's bad. If the crew goes down, it goes bad. If these ever meet, you lose. Now we were talking about feeding the crew. This actually shows you for 8 crew, you actually have to feed 4, for example. So certain times you have to do that as well, and that's one way to lose, is making any of these 2 go on top of each other. Now once everyone's finished all their actions, typically there'll be a round end. You'll read something or have the app read it to you, and then you'll have some choices to make, whether you're going to stay here, go somewhere else, things like that. Now sometimes bad things will happen. You'll get this misfortune, and then when you roll for a check, you roll twice and you take the lower number, but you'll also be getting some reroll tokens by doing some good things, allowing you to mitigate that somewhat. Now you'll also have a ship's log. You'll name the ship, the scenario. Sometimes you'll be writing key names that you'll find throughout the game, and certain crossroad events and certain things will trigger off if you've seen a key name or not, and different things will happen. Earlier we talked about if your threat fills up and it asks you to read it, you'll be reading these in order from top to bottom. You don't want these to happen. These are bad. Sometimes you'll visit the captain's quarters, and from top to bottom you'll be reading these throughout the scenario. And same for the captain's mission, where you'll get a little bit more information about what's going on in that scenario. Now those are sort of the nuts and bolts of how the game works at a high level, but again, all these scenarios are very different from each other. All right, now this is going to be more of a sort of a first impressions, because I have played through the first scenario. Now, Each of those scenarios are about 4 hours with, you know, a halfway point where there's a stop where you can save it and such. And I played through this first scenario. I also have played it sort of in the solo mode as well. So, but I can still give you an idea of how the mechanisms work and what I think about the game so far. First of all, art, and that huge storybook thing is just amazing. I mean, it just looks so nice. Plaid Hat always puts a lot of time and effort into the thematics, always into the art, and here's no different. It just looks gorgeous as you flip through and look at those different pages. The graphic design is very clean as well. For me, the best thing in this game is the story writing. It is just amazing. It's very descriptive. It keeps you on edge. The story's twists and turns, and just they did a great job writing the stories, making you feel like you're right in the middle of the story. And on top of that, those professional voice actors. And I know some people are not gonna like having an app, but man, does this make the game so much better. Those professional voice actors really make you feel like you're smack dab in the middle of that story. I mean, I even tried to play one of the other scenarios where the voices weren't quite ready yet, because I got the game earlier than it was really coming out. And sure, the story was good, and it's still, you know, well written, but man, without those voices, it didn't quite have that extra oomph that it gave it when I played the first scenario. So the voice actors really pumped this up. I hope I start seeing this as a normal thing, where some of these bigger story style events, these games that have ones that you're reading a lot of things, I hope that they're going to start trending this way in the market, because wow, does this really make this game stand out for sure. Now the app itself, many people are not going to like, or some people I've heard don't like apps in games, and I get it. I don't like playing around while I'm playing a game either, but in this case the app really does help the game. It helps it to the point where, you know, those crossroad cards, instead of having a deck of cards that are stagnant, you've got an app that's going to do the crossroads for you. It's known where you've been. It knows when to give you new things. It's able to track things. They're able to update it. They're probably able to add more content easier. And it just acts so well in this game. It's not overbearing. You just type in a number and hit listen, you know, but it's allowing it to do behind the scenes a lot of creative things that you couldn't do with just cards. And I like that aspect of it. And of course, you know, extra expansions down the road. Now the mechanisms themselves, you know, mostly worker placement and resource management. And I like that the mechanisms work well, but they don't get in the way. You know, like there's another story-driven game that's very popular that came out like late last year on Kickstarter, Tainted Grail, that a lot of people loved. And sure, I thought the game was fine, and the story was good, but the mechanisms of the combat was so fiddly. It was interesting and innovative, but at the same time it was still so fiddly. So we sit around and do nothing while one person tries to figure out how to chain together all these different cards together. And it just wasn't that interesting, and it made the game go way down for me. Where here, the mechanisms are they're streamlined. They're there, they work, but they don't get in the way. You don't even realize they're really there. I'm gonna go here and do this. Like, oh, it doesn't even feel like worker placement, even though it is. It kind of like, because you're so involved in the story, and I like that. The mechanisms work, but they don't get in the way. I love the individual pirates. How each of us is an individual. We get to set up our sort of Mad Libs with our different things, and those will sort of be sprinkled out through our own story throughout the game. And I like that each time you play a scenario, you'll be a different pirate with different strategies and such, because you're going to be good at some things and not good at others. You'll be able to, you know, power up, level up on certain things and not others. And I like that that's going to change from time to time, from scenario to scenario. The solo and two-player variants work similarly to each other, but somewhat different from the regular version, where you're going to be running multiple pirates, but you're still just going to have one pirate sheet. And you're going to, different things work different ways, like getting the infamy and you being able to write the stars down and using supplies to do that. Like, there's some different mechanisms with that, but it still works. I enjoyed it. I went back and played this solo, and it works fine with that. And again, I like it better with more people, but I wouldn't not play it if you're like, oh, I'm only going to play the solo. I think you'll still enjoy it. I like the stopping points in the scenario, where instead of playing a 4-hour game, you can play a 2-hour game or a 90-minute game. And you can say, you know what, we're going to stop tonight, we're done, we're going to leave, and we can come back to it again. I like that. But I also like that the scenarios are replayable. Now, granted, once you've played a scenario, you'll know the story, overarching story, you'll know what you're trying to do, you'll know some of the big plot points and things like that. But there's a lot of variability. For one, we already mentioned in your pirate and your strategy, what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you can easily level up on. The navigation tiles, gosh, they're different every game, and there's so many of those that you're probably not going to come up with the same one twice. And even if you do, it might be a crossroads, and you might take a different decision and see where it goes. So what you're trying to do doesn't change when you play the same scenario again, but how you get there, what happens on the way changes, and it's a new adventure. So I think you could still play this multiple times each of the scenarios. You don't need the same group each scenario, which is one of the big pluses here, because I don't play a lot of campaign games because I don't often get the same group together multiple times, over and over in a short period of time. And here you don't have to. You know what? We play on 2 different occasions. We play the first half, and then the next night we play the second half. Or we just play one 4-hour thing one night. It's great. We have fun. But if we don't get together again for months, it's okay. I can find a different group to play another scenario with. And I love that. And I hope that more and more campaign games have that sort of built in. And the reason why it works here, again, is because the mechanisms are so easy. It's a cooperative game. It's easy to teach. It all works like that. I can't think of a negative thing to say about this game, except, and it's not even valid, because I got the game early before it's out. The game's only up for pre-order right now to the public. It's not even out yet. But there wasn't enough voice actors for me to play the multiple different scenarios afterwards with the voice characters that I really wanted to play, so I'm kind of holding off on that. So for me, the only negative is that all the voices aren't there yet, but they probably will be by the time you get it. I talked to the publisher, Plaid Hat. They're coming out with news. Each scenario is coming out with the voices about every couple weeks now. So by the time it actually just gets into distribution and you might have it on your table, there'll probably be plenty of the scenarios, if not all of them, with those voices on there. But overall, this is probably one of the most immersive, fun adventure story games I've played ever. So far, and I've only played one of the scenarios. It took me close to 4 hours. I'd say 3 hours and 40 minutes. Again, it was our first time playing through as well, but this has been so fun. I can't wait to play more of these, and because of that, it is getting a saxophone serenade. So without further ado, here we go. Did you miss the Game Topper 2.0 Kickstarter? Have no fear, it's not too late to get in on the ultimate gaming accessory. Convert your table into a high-quality gaming table with a fully portable Game Topper system and take advantage of some of the best 3mm premium gaming mats in the industry. New styles, new sizes, and new accessories can be yours. Upgrade every game you play by late backing now at GameToppersLLC.com.